This video is for business leaders who understand the value of the creative teachers all around them. Have you ever been stuck on a problem? Maybe you had a solution, but you knew it wasn't quite right yet? Me too. Mine was a classroom problem. How can I keep students moving and entertained while still actually teaching them something? This is sort of a universal challenge when you're teaching young learners, but especially when you're doing it during a pandemic where most of the activities that are great hits aren't allowed because you can't touch anything that they touch. You can't touch them. You can't high five them or anything that's just playful and fun. So watch to the end of this video for bonus material on how to identify your creative teachers and a recommended video about how to notice more sources of creativity, including your creative teachers, in your immediate environment. Honestly, though I love teaching young kids, they're a little terrifying in that if something doesn't work, you know in an instant without any easy way to understand why. That is, they will either immediately respond positively and ideally in the way you hope they will, or they won't. And it's sort of like an awkward silence in a room in a social situation with adults. Like somebody says something, the whole room goes silent, and everybody feels uncomfortable. In any case, here are two examples, and this wasn't that there was a big problem, but it's really important. And you don't exactly get feedback. You get instant and honest feedback from young kids. It's just if it's bad feedback, you only get it in their responses, but you can't oftentimes learn why, and you don't understand why. So you got to figure it out. So my two examples of this, a walking or stepping game, but there were laminated cards. So these cards were set on the floor, big flash cards, and they were good, but unfortunately, because they were slippery, it wasn't safe for the students to let them step on the cards because they could slip in their socks or they could slip on the floor and fall down and hurt themselves. And because of COVID, they couldn't touch them. So what we maybe normally do to make it safer, the stepping meant that they never had to touch anything that touched the cards. So it was a bit of a challenge. And the next one was an activity vocabulary game with gestures. Same issues as above, except the movement that I was actually having them do, the gestures I was having them do were actually physically challenging, like exercise more or less. And also that particular maneuver took more coordination than some of the youngest students had. So two superior solutions from two of my dozens of creative teachers came about. You probably already guessed that my creative teachers also happen to be my students. So in the first case, it took just one student jumping over a flashcard for me to immediately change the game from the fairly boring step over the card or step on each side of the card, not so sexy and fun, to a way funner jump over the card game, because jumping is funner than stepping over or around. So that was the first one. And the second one, I solved the problem of doing a pedaling motion because the activity, the verb was pedal or biking. So the problem of doing a pedaling motion with my legs by planting my hands sort of behind me and to the side to stabilize my body, so you could sit on your bum and lift up your legs and do a pedaling motion. It works okay, but it's actually it's basically a fairly demanding ab exercise, which made it basically challenging after a short period of time. The kids would start to get tired, not to mention the assistant teachers in the room who helped me manage the language issue, which is, of course, Japanese that I don't speak. So just as before, one of my genius creative teachers solved the problem in an instant. while I'm showing them how to do it, and they understood I could do the gesture, show my hands, slap the ground, and they knew what to do, but it was still, like I said, challenging in terms of the abs, but also challenging in terms of balance and coordination for 2-year-olds to do. So one of the students just rolled over flat on their back with their legs high in the air and joyfully pedaled their feet. So I went, okay, everybody, we're going to do it this way. As soon as I saw it, it was like, that's better, that's funner, that's easier. So the much funner, easier maneuver instantly became the new pedaling or biking motion for the game. So if you choose to set aside, or if we choose to set aside our egos in service of all possible and or superior solutions, you too may discover a 2-year-old has something to teach you about creativity. That's really the whole gist of this episode. We're already to the bonus material, which is a little longer today. So thank you for watching this far. So where and how can you find your creative teachers? In my case, it's obvious. They're one of my sources is students. It's not the only. But fortunately, there are almost certainly creative teachers around you. So what you can do here is you can get your RAS, or reticular activating system, which I've also heard referred to as reticular activation system. Probably the identical. I've never heard the second phrase in years, so I'm using both. So you can get your RAS on the job of thinking, reflecting, and taking action on how you can identify them, that is your creative teachers, ideally daily for a week or more. So that is what you do is you think, reflect on, and take action on how you would identify your creative teachers, and then go through that process every week, just thinking about it, reflecting on it, trying to figure out a way to solve the problem. And that's all you're doing. You don't have to solve it. You just have to mentally ask yourself the question and go through the process of how would I solve this? And then, just basically noodle on it and then just let it go. If you solve it, great, write that down. If you don't, great. Either way, just do it at least every day for a week. So doing the above exercise essentially will send your RAS, or reticular activating system, the memo to let through anything in your environment that helps you identify creative teachers and the sources of creativity that your RAS had to that point stopped from entering your conscious mind, because it was neither a threat to you nor a priority for you. So in evolutionary neurobiological terms, our RAS is, or RAS is, helps our very limited conscious, energy-hungry, deliberate, and comparatively slow system 2, or effortful, slow-thinking mind or system, stay focused on only what matters to us or our survival. That is because our capacity to pay conscious attention to things, any things at one time, is, though you may believe it's 7 plus or minus 2, that has now long been demonstrated to be overly optimistic. It's far more likely, the latest research would indicate it's 3 plus or minus 1. So we can only pay attention to a very limited number of things using our conscious deliberative system 2. And because of that, we evolved to the part of our brain, the RAS, has essentially evolved to say, okay, what is in the environment that the brain is noticing, that the eyes, the ears, and your sense of touch, all your senses are detecting, but the RAS essentially makes the executive decision to say, okay, that's not a threat, that's not novel, there's no specific reason we should pay attention. So let's ignore or keep that below the level of consciousness, because we want to save the valuable conscious attention for only the things that are most important and or support survival, because it's such a limited resource. So it's essentially why we instantly jump and or turn our attention to loud or unfamiliar noise, especially in the dark, because ignoring it might just make us dinner for a nocturnal predator. So that's it for the bonus material, and the recommended video for today is about how you can more deeply, it's essentially an extension of what I've talked about today in the bonus material, and it's called Reflect More to Notice More. I'll put a link there so that you can check that out. And if this video is of value to you, or you think there was something useful about it, please recommend this video to someone you love. Thanks. This has been Crush It Club 252, Finding Your Creative Teachers. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.